Hello. Tonight we're going to learn about photosynthesis, how organisms obtain their energy. Now we know that on Earth there is energy and that we get all our energy from the sun. So we're going to talk about how photosynthesis plays a very vital role in us getting our energy. The definition of photosynthesis is the process through which plants make their own food through means of a chemical change. Now we know that by now a chemical change is when we make something new. So the energy is going to be changed into a different form. Through the process of photosynthesis, plants and other organisms convert the sun's radiant energy into chemical energy. Now in 6th grade, y'all went through energy transformation, and we know that radiant energy is the sun, and chemical energy is an energy that is stored in chemical bonds. So photosynthesis changes the sun's energy into chemical energy, which is a form that all life uses. So let's look at this basic picture of photosynthesis. Okay, we know that plants obviously do it and that it requires the sun. So let's look at this picture, and I want you to study it and look at the arrows and the directions of the arrows. Just by this picture, can you tell me what 3 things do all plants have to create photosynthesis? They have to have light from the sun, they have to have carbon dioxide, and they have to have water. Now, earlier we have talked about chemical equations. So if we were to say that these 3 things are going into this reaction, what do we call those? Do you remember? They're called reactants. Now, we know that we get all of our oxygen from plants. They take in carbon dioxide, they give off oxygen. We take in oxygen, we give off carbon dioxide. So in this example, what would we call oxygen? Would it be in a reactant like the others? Or would it be a product? It's a product because it is something that the plant is making. So what do they do with all that energy that they make? As a result of photosynthesis, plants meet their immediate needs for energy. All life has to have energy. We get our energy by eating and obtaining food. Plants get their energy through photosynthesis, and they use this energy to allow them to grow, develop, respond, reproduce. The food also is not used right away, but it can be stored by their plants in their roots, stems, leaves, fruit, and flowers. So just like plants and just like animals, they have to require energy to obtain life responses like growing, reproduction, and so forth. So where does photosynthesis occur? Now, we haven't really gone into cells that much, but in a plant cell, photosynthesis occurs in an organelle called the chloroplasts. These are found in leaf cells. And if you look at this picture, the chloroplasts are all green because they contain the pigment chlorophyll. This is what gives plants their green color. The reason why we are not able to do photosynthesis in our cells is because we do not have chloroplasts, which is a good thing because then we would all be green. So the purpose of a chloroplast is to make the food. It's what makes their chemical energy. And they make this in the form of a sugar and a starch, which remember we call carbohydrates. Now, photosynthesis actually makes a sugar called glucose. So that is where all their energy goes. Glucose is the form of the chemical energy. So what's the raw materials of photosynthesis? Meaning, what goes in? What are the reactants? Well, we already talked about a couple of these. You have to have energy, you have to have carbon dioxide, and you have to have water. Those 3 are our reactants. Now, how come I didn't include sunlight right here? Okay, because sunlight is actually what allows the chemical reaction to happen. So we pretty much just put these 2 as our reactants. Now look at the picture. What are the products? So the products, which again is what is made, is the sugar and the release of oxygen. So here is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. Write it down. Pause the video and write it down. Make sure you're very accurate because you are going to become very familiar with this chemical equation. So it reads 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O yields C6H12O6 plus 6 O2. Well, that doesn't really mean anything, does it? So let's break it down. What does CO2 stand for? That's carbon dioxide. H2O, water. So all plants take carbon dioxide from the air and water from their roots. They then also take the radiant energy in the form of sunlight to allow this chemical reaction to take place in the chloroplast of their cells, making glucose, C6H12O6. This is their energy. This is their chemical energy. From radiant to chemical, it's in glucose. And then oxygen happens to be made as a byproduct. The glucose is very useful for plants in many ways. First thing is it can be used in respiration to release energy. Now, when you hear the word respiration, you tend to think of breathing. Well, plants breathe, kind of, but in a different way. They take in and release different types of gases. They take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Even though they don't have lungs, they still do gas exchange. And so that's what we mean by respiration. They can be joined together to make starch for storage, which is their food. Don't forget their starch is their glucose. Can be combined with nutrients in the soil to make proteins to help them with new growth. Can be joined together to make cellulose to help with the cell wall to provide support. Plants need to be very strong to push the little seedlings all the way through the dirt and able to grow upright. And the cell wall helps with this. And it can be converted into fats and oils, which we normally find for all of our seeds. And the last thing is glucose can be converted into fructose, which is the sweetness that we find in fruit. So what provides the energy for the chemical reaction of photosynthesis? It's the sun. The sun provides energy for the photosynthesis. The sun provides energy for everything on Earth. The whole reason the Earth and all life exists is because we get energy from the sun. And it is plants, through the process of photosynthesis, that converts this radiant energy into a form that all life can use, which is chemical energy. So energy transformation. Let's review a little bit from 6th grade. Light energy is also called radiant energy. And radiant energy is transformed into chemical energy, which is found inside the plants through photosynthesis. And it is stored inside the plant as a chemical energy in the form of glucose, which is their food. And it's also your food too. The whole reason you eat and are eating a salad is to get glucose, or to eat a steak, which is eating a cow that ate the grass to get glucose. Autotrophs. This is a word that you learned in 6th grade. It is an organism that is able to make their own food in the form of sugar. Auto means it automatically does it. So all plants are considered autotrophs. Another word for this are called producers. Heterotrophs are animals or organisms that feed off other life forms. We are heterotrophs. We cannot make our own food, so therefore we have to obtain our energy by feeding off of other life forms. Like I said, whether you're eating a salad or eating a steak, you're still obtaining that glucose from another animal that ate a plant or from the plant itself. And these are also called consumers. So autotrophs are the same thing as producers because they both automatically produce their own food. And heterotrophs are the same thing as consumers because they have to consume to get their food. So here's the formula for photosynthesis. I want you to take a moment, pause, and write it down. I want you to write it in both forms, both in the words and in the chemical formula. So carbon dioxide, which is CO2, plus water, H2O, are our reactants that yield sugar, which is glucose, C6H12O6, and releases oxygen, O2. This is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. So the reactants, the products. So your assignment for photosynthesis is I want you to come to school tomorrow with a word picture. The only word that you're allowed to write is photosynthesis. You cannot have any other words. However, you can use pictures and symbols of any type. I want you to create your picture that has meaning to you and the definition of photosynthesis, and it has to be colored. So go outside the box in your thinking, but don't forget only one word. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.